So for the past 10 years or so, Utah has been in a pretty serious drought, okay? Water restrictions, low reservoirs, all kinds of problems like that. But this winter, the 22-23 winter, we have received record snowfall. So that's great news for our water supply, but it increases the risk of flooding this spring really severely. So at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do to mitigate the risk of your house flooding. Hey everybody, this is Matt Stone. I'm your local Utah realtor, and every day I try to put out some valuable content as it relates to the Utah housing market. I am not very good at dancing, so you will not find me on TikTok doing the lip syncs and the dance, but you will find me here trying to put out, again, valuable content so that you have all the information you need to make good decisions when buying or selling a home here in Utah. Now, if you're thinking about moving to Utah and you have specific questions about the market or, cities or neighborhoods, please reach out to me. I'm actually a transplant myself, moving here to Utah a number of years ago. So I think I have a pretty good idea of the good and maybe the not so good things about living here in the Beehive State. So let's get into it. For the past decade or so, Utah has been in a pretty big drought. A lot of the western states have. We've had water restrictions on watering your grass, watering crops. We've seen the lakes and the reservoirs be very low flows on the rivers. It's affected recreating, fishing, all kinds of problems that have come from this drought. But this winter, we've received record-breaking snowfall, which seems to have ended the drought, at least for now. The National Weather Service is saying that the Utah snow water equivalency hit 29.4 inches, breaking the 40-year state record of 28.8 inches. As well, Park City Mountain pushed past 500 inches, breaking their 49-year record. And Alta and Brighton ski resorts both broke their records at 759 and 778 inches respectively. And even since those records were broken, they've received more snow. So what does all this mean? Lots of good news, of course. Means we have plenty of drinking water. We're going to have plenty of water in our lakes and reservoirs. Plenty of water to water our grass and water our crops. The businesses that depend on the summer recreation are going to be doing well. As well as, of course, ski resorts and the surrounding businesses. They were thriving this winter because we had unbelievable powder, attracting the skiers and the snowboarders to the greatest snow on earth here in Utah. Another boon from all of this snow that we're getting is the Great Salt Lake. Their levels are rising up. There's been some issues with the dust that's being kicked up from the dry lake bed and being poured into the urban areas. So it looks like that's going to be a problem that might be diminishing because of the snowfall. And of course, with the water supply, having more snow this year means that if in the next year or two that we have less water or we get less snow than we need, we'll have extra water to kind of get us through. But it is not all good news. So what happens here, if we have a mild spring as far as temperatures go, well, then that snow up in the higher elevations is going to melt at a nice, slow, manageable rate. The water is going to go into the little streams and the creeks and the rivers and the reservoirs, and they'll be able to manage it just fine. But if things heat up too quickly, like they did back in 1983, then that water comes down at a really high rate. The small streams, the creeks and the rivers, they fill up too fast. Sometimes even before they can get to the reservoirs, they end up going into neighborhoods and into homes and down streets and into businesses, causing a whole lot of problems. If you go on to KSL, you can see lots of articles that are already hitting. We've got one showing here in the Sugar House area up in Salt Lake that people are already having their houses flooded because of these small streams are overflowing, and that water is getting into streets and into neighborhoods. Another article that you can see here shows that there's a neighborhood in Salt Lake where the water is eroding out under the streets and causing a lot of damage that way. So a lot of problems already, and we haven't even really gotten into the warmer temperatures of springtime. Now here's a clip that I shot today of the Provo River, pretty close to the mouth of Provo Canyon. Now you're going to see the water's running nice and fast. It's at a normal high level for this time of year. You can look at this video and see, well, there's plenty of bank still for that river to rise. But that might be a little deceiving because, yes, in this little area, the banks are pretty high and there's it could accommodate a lot more water. But downstream, sometimes the bank is only a foot or so higher than the water level is right now. So if we get too much water too fast, and the temperatures heat up too fast, easily at different points along the river systems, that water is going to break over, and it's going to find its way somewhere. It's going to find its way into somebody's yard, into neighborhoods, down streets, and it will find its way into people's homes, usually through a window well into a basement or some other subground area of their home. Okay, so what can you do to mitigate the flooding potential possibility in your home? Well, I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do. Number 1, and this is probably the thing that most people are asking me about right now, and that is getting flood insurance. Now, certainly something you can do, but I talked to my insurance agent this morning, and this is what they had to say. So yes, they can write you a policy. They would be happy to do that. However, there are some things for you to consider. Number 1 is there is a 30-day waiting period before that policy kicks in. Well, we're already into spring. The weather is already starting to heat up. So that means the risk of flooding could be anywhere from the next couple of days to the next couple of weeks. And so in that waiting period, if your house floods, they are not going to pay on that policy. So now, if things warm up slowly right now and then we get a big heat blast, maybe later in May, then of course the waiting period's gone and you should be covered. But definitely something to consider. Another thing that they said is there are some gray areas in those policies. For example, let's say you're living on a street and the water's getting into your neighborhood, it's running down the street, and it misses the first 3 houses, but for some reason, because of a bump in the road or a curve in the street, it decides to go into your yard and into your window well and into your basement. Well, if the other houses around you did not flood, they're going to challenge that coverage. So definitely something that you want to pay attention to is these gray areas around the policy. All right, now the second thing that you can do, and this may seem old school, but it does work because of the way people's houses flood here in Utah, and that is sandbagging. So look, think about it this way. We are not on a coast here, okay? We don't have like storm surge and tidal surge and that type of flooding. We don't have these giant swaths of neighborhoods and miles of coastland that are being flooded. Usually it's a house here, it's a house there, a couple here, a business over here, and it comes in because it finds its way in a little gully, a little slough, and it gets into a low part in your yard, and it usually finds its way into a window well and into your basement. So it's not your whole house that's going to be underwater like in other places. So sandbags can work a miracle here. You know, you can find the lowest spot in your yard or a couple places of entry into your home, and if you have those sandbags ready, you can see that day or the night before where that water is starting to rise or where the danger is, and you can stack up the sandbags. Sometimes just a couple of inches or maybe a foot of that sandbag protection can save your entire house or your entire basement from being flooded. So a lot of local municipalities and cities have resources. They've got places where you can go and get the sandbags and fill them up yourself. So definitely something to check out, or reach out to me. I can get that information for you. Now, the last thing that you can do to mitigate is if you're in the process of buying a house, if you're looking around different areas and you haven't bought a home yet, I can actually provide you with flood risk maps. It'll show you through historic data, through Army Corps of Engineer data, through insurance data, what areas are most and least likely to flood, okay? You might look at a lot and think, oh my gosh, this is high and dry. But what you may not know is one house down or, you know, 1 block away, there's a dry creek bed that you didn't even know about. And in high water years, that water comes down barreling there through the neighbor's yard and into your yard and into your basement. So I can definitely provide you with that data to help you make a better decision and hopefully give you a little bit of peace of mind when it comes to buying your next house. So there you go. I hope you got some value out of this and some resources that can help you with this issue, which is a very real issue this spring. And if you have specific questions about maybe your neighborhood, your street, anything like that as it relates to the flooding or just the Utah housing market in general, please reach out to me. I would love to make sure that you have all the information you need and to help you in any way with buying or selling a home here in Utah.